Hello, everyone. This is Andrew. Welcome to Atomo. It is January 3rd, 2026. Happy New Year. And the Venezuela thing happened. So, what I want to do is just take a moment to throw some pieces of the puzzle out there for some people to chew on. I don't get any special information or anything here. I'm just being another person throwing some ideas out there as we try to figure out what's happening in our world today. So we just got word that Trump went in with special military operation. There's been some memes out at the speed at which Trump can run a special military operation, and Putin in his special military operation. So I thought that was a bit funny. But getting into this is what we think the run up to this has been. So we know that there's been a fleet placed out in the Gulf of America, and that's another thing to note here is, Trump renaming Gulf of America isn't just a vanity act. It's to show that there's a new doctrine in town to build the Fortress America, which is going to be inclusive of all the Americas. And to create one big happy family, we have to remove some elements of power that are entrenched. One of the big elements, and this is just subjective, is there's the cartel money. When I say subjective, is I don't know for sure. We can just take a look at, when water's boiling, you look at the top of the water, it's all bubbling, and you feel heat. It's like, okay, I think the water's boiling. Because again, we don't have all the information of what's happening here. So first of all, Maduro is removed from Venezuela. First thing to note is Maduro is removed, but it also included his wife as well. And that should be a tell that if you, as we've seen before with Secretary of State Clinton and Gaddafi, if they don't like the guy and don't want the guy, they will get rid of the guy in no uncertain terms. In this case, the Maduro was exfilled. So, what might have been some of the lead up to this? Why would we go taking Maduro out? Wasn't he a democratically elected leader in another country? Well, part of cleaning up the house is looking at all of the deep state apparatus that's installed. Can be said that Venezuela is a Qatar, but in South America. What that means is, the drug cartel and drug money there is a conduit to move money through dark networks and route that to other places around the world. So instead of wanting to go after NGOs and cut off their money, which was done through USAID, some of these NGOs might have other funding sources as well for them to do their shenanigans, and they may have possibly consultants that work for them from intel agencies that give them advice and consultation on how to run the operation so that they achieve the objectives of, first building capacity and then deploying that capacity to create the, as Mike Benz would say, the civil, civil society. And it's one of those components of that. So in order to change that, well, you just can't go to the people that are on the surface. It's like if you're going to solve the problem of drugs, you just can't go after the people who are dealing the drugs, because there's many layers below that get to the point where drugs are running. There are some alleged conversations or ideas that have been put in play, like Dominion and Smartmatic. Again, I'm saying this is alleged, not sure 100%, but using NGO constellations and moving money through an NGO constellation and getting that backstopped by the voting kind of integrity stuff that's been happening, it is possible that there are conduits in which this is running through that have been triangulated to Venezuela. Is it about the oil? I don't think so in this case, not 100%. Back in Gaddafi time in Libya, yes, there's the very good, not that sweet light crude is very good. It's just a way of refining it, different than more of a heavy sour. You need different refinery processes to deal with that. So in order to change up the game board, you might need to take a big piece out of it. Now, Maduro could potentially be somebody that needed some help but couldn't clean up things on his own. He just does not have enough power to push against the apparatus that has been installed in Venezuela. So potentially there's an operation done in deals with Trump to make Trump look like the bad guy, which he has no problem doing, in order to exfil out Maduro and his wife. With that, you're like, well, what about the oil? What about the Chinese element there? Well, potentially what they do is they go in and they restart the oil industry, which has been running about 20% production, and bumping that up and still giving China the cut that they need in the oil, while still maintaining that part of the operation. But it might be that there's different like mercenary groups or other deep state apparatus that are no longer going to be on the payroll once that starts to ramp up. And that's going to have the ability to kind of diminish those capabilities and help Venezuela perhaps become not as a socialist whole it is now, but something that the people can take pride in. But with Maduro being on U.S. soil, there's some elements playing out here. Now, it's as Maduro is standing trial and as he gives information about what's happening within the country, the U.S. intelligence groups and military operations can target the cartel strongholds throughout the country and reduce the footprint that has on the country, so that the State Department can come in, U.S. State Department come in and start to fix things up from the governmental standpoint. They got practice now with Doge. They got practice now from Argentina, so that information can help them to kind of lay out a pathway forward. I believe also that the U.S. State Department, J.D. Vance, and the VP in Venezuela have been in contact, and I believe that vice president is still there, and I believe open to helping to put the country down some correct paths, like doing some work to ensure that the party in Caracas, in the absence of Maduro, can still run. But now the pen that Maduro was holding to sign off on things happening in Venezuela now get to see the light of day to the U.S. State Department. So if there were shenanigans going on that had to go across Maduro's desk, and if he decided not to sign off on certain things, that could put his life or his family's life at risk, and many other things that are done when trying to extort a leader to do specific things. Now, if Maduro does go to trial in USA, and I believe, yes, he will go to trial because he's been indicted and there's been indictment sent out. So, hey, so the people saying Pam Bondi's not doing anything, she has points on the board now because she has an indictment against this guy on drug running and weapons running as well. If you do any search, you'll be able to find the counts that he's been indicted on. And what that means is, given that we have a trial, we got it live streamed, where he gives testimony about how Venezuela, under orders of U.S. intelligence, rigged elections, started to intentionally flow and flood drugs into the region, specifically the USA, Canada as well. Being Canadian here, hey, can we get some help? You know, just as an aside, I've seen so much more drug use in my area, in the greater Vancouver area, than I've seen ever before. It's getting quite out of hand, so hopefully this helps to correct that. So we get some more information coming through a trial. Then as that information disseminates, then U.S. intel actors that are identified by Maduro can get written up on charges. And then at the end of it, if Maduro plays well, he might either be acquitted by a jury and he can go back home and start putting pieces together, or he might be given a special VIP treatment where he's kept in a light custody within the USA, while his successor is taken care of, and they put the pieces all back into play. So that's that gives you kind of a setup, because with this, if there are Davos or EU elements, City of London elements that are in play on this now, assuming that the U.S. has now some boots on the ground and they got capabilities that are building to start to dig out all of the illicit trade and apparatus that has been going on, to resupply that, they would need to start moving troops, material, probably not troops because it's not going to be, it's not going to get to that level. But if you wanted to run guns or run mercenaries into Venezuela to support the cartels, that's going to have to be done along very long supply lines. China has been taken care of while they were in town in Caracas doing their deals, which potentially was coordinated. It looks increasingly like it was coordinated because they were there at the time. Because Chinese diplomats met with Maduro 2 hours before the capture, and it looks like the military was put on standby. The VP is over in Moscow, and so it looks like China and Russia may have had a bit of a play in this as well, to make sure that the people assets were out of the way, in a way that they won't get retaliated against. And then we have some triangulation against potential deep state assets that are in Venezuela. And so as they're getting cleaned out, the ability to resupply them is going to be significantly reduced. It's going to be very difficult to get past a U.S. Navy with all their electronic warfare signals and intelligence in that area in order to get in. So, yeah, and then with that, what we potentially see, let's pivot over a bit to Israel, Middle East. We're seeing in Iran at this time some upsurge in demonstrations against the government. It could be that maybe the elements in Iran can't do very much because they're tied by their military group. Perhaps the IRGC has been locking down that side of the game board. So what we might see is the need for potentially Bibi Netanyahu. Let's see how things line up with him and the deals that he is going to make, because it looks like in Israel, as the factions within Iran are being dismantled, then there's no need to have a very aggressive Israel in play, and that helps to set up the economic zone within Gaza to get that rebuilt. But the only way to have a successful Gaza is to have an economic Gaza where people can go live their lives, trade, make money, raise their families, And you can't do that if there's always this military occupation that's going on. So in order to get more of, and I know jokes are abound about, Trump building Trump Plaza within Gaza. But if you take a look at it and step back, is, you want to solve problems in the place where problems are happening and not have people try to run over to your country. Wouldn't it be great where, us in the West look at other countries in the world and say, wow, I'd like to live there because they got everything figured out and it looks like a solid place to live, not have too much government in your way, to make money, to be like a good middle class citizen and have like a really nice and decent life. You work hard and that work gets rewarded. That's kind of what this is all about. That's happening. Cleaning up the Iran, getting that back up and running, taking out all this deep state stuff that seems to be tied to war and always wanting to fight. Because when things start to fail from a financial side, then they take you to war, which now we're trying to pen in. This is kind of a take as well, is trying to pen in what the EU is trying to do as far as being one world government and very 1984, creating the party, and that party is going to run everything in the world, and that's now getting some of the studs removed and get some of the termite-eaten wood replaced. And thanks to Tulsi as the ODNI director for national intelligence, who can start to take a look at the game board. And as one E.M. Burlingame, if you look that name up, has been talking about the old Praetorian Guards who've been keeping our leaders under kind of a lock and key without the ability to make a lot of moves. Kind of similar to, if we think, for those who are Babylon 5 fans, Emperor Molari towards the end of the show, when the shadows have taken him over, when he becomes as corrupt can be, but then the whole deep state gets connected with him, and he can't do anything without the deep state saying yes or no. In the show, he had an alien thing that was connected to his neck, and that basically told him everything that he needed to do. And if he didn't do it right, then he got lit up pretty bad, pain amplified and whatnot. But the only way you can get the alien to kind of shut off is he can get drunk more than the alien could get drunk that's connected to him. So the moment that he has the alien passing out, then he can speak truths. And then, there's a very interesting part of the show where when he has those moments where he can speak truth, is then, things can change, and we see the we see how their game board was set up. So yeah, I'll stop it there. That's what I wanted to bring forward. I want to put some of those pieces on the table as far as making our lives better here in the West, and removing the elements of the drug trade that we've been flooded with. This is potentially a move in that direction. So with that, that's kind of a miracle that we're looking for, and hope that we can clean up some of this and create a pathway for people to be successful, to live their lives, and to come back to a high trust society.